some good money from that, but it didn't work out. They were looking for a show that would be appealable to boys, because MTV is watched by 10 to 14-year-old girls. So it was a sketch comedy like Kids in the Hall, and it just didn't work out. Anyways, my main gig is actually Cedar Box Studio, which me and my wife run. We just do private instruction, of a bunch of different instruments. My wife teaches voice. I do recording. I record local bands. And I've done some minimal label work as well, some more big boy stuff. And then I've done some workshops, yada yada. Let's see. And then recently I started doing Fat Bard with a buddy of mine, Zach, who I actually met when he was in middle school and I was recording. But he's a really good guitar player, and Zach, he's not here. Okay, he's not here. But anyways, yeah, he's a really good guitar player. Actually taught him for a little while, and at one point when he was going to college, he was like, I want to start doing like video games and stuff. And I was like, you know what, I kind of want to as well, so let's do this. Anyways, yeah, I've been playing games for a while. So let's move on. So independent game developers need a logical mind to program, a creative mind to design, an eye for art, an ear for music, and most people have maybe two of these skills if you're lucky. So that kind of puts you at a crossroads. You either need to, just be amazing at everything, which a lot of people indie-wise may try to do, but that doesn't always work out. Learn when to do something themselves and when to outsource work if it's above their heads, which is probably the best thing to do. And then, really importantly, learn to communicate effectively with work for hires in fields that they're not comfortable with. And that's kind of a big part about today in this presentation, is so that folks that don't know a lot about music, but obviously need to know something about it, so you can communicate well with musicians when you're getting music for your game, or with sound designers if you're getting effects for your game. Just knowing some of the lingo, knowing how to communicate what you want effectively. So, let's keep going. So part one, music primer for developers. So these are just a couple little musical terms that are useful for you. A lot of this might be elementary. If you've ever taken music lessons before, did any musical stuff in your life, you might know some of this stuff. But anyways, I brought the guitar just to give you some, it's stuck, it's stuck.
Oh God.
I got it, okay. So anyways. I thought I'd give you some examples of this stuff, because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually play it. Helps you kind of understand what it is. These are terms you could use, like if someone sent you something and you don't like what they sent you, and you can't quite put your finger on why you don't like it, these terms might help you a little bit. So anyways, tempo is the speed of a song. That's a pretty simple thing. If something's fast, it's going to be slow. Pitch is the highness or lowness of sound. High can be perceived as light or bright. Low can be perceived as heavy or dark. So sometimes people might say, oh, someone that might talk to me that doesn't know much about music will say, oh, it's too bright sounding. It's too bright. Usually I interpret that as meaning there's too many trebly notes. So high stuff, low stuff, pretty simple. When you're listening to a song though, if something's bothering you in the low end, in the lower notes, chances are it could be like the bass instrument, for example. So you might send something back to your musician and say, hey, you know what? I like everything, but there's something weird going on with the bass. I don't like the sound of the bass, So being able to identify the range helps, because then you can also identify what instrument in particular is bothering you in the song. Rhythm is the placement of music in time, creates the pulse or groove of a song. You could have the same notes, but just do a million different things with them. So I could have a groove or rhythm that's like, or I could have like, or I could have, or I could have like, you have a million different things, right? So there's so much you can do with one thing. You might say, you know what, I like the song, but the intro has this one little rhythmic thing at the beginning. It goes like, and I don't like that. I want it to be, I want it to be a little different. I'm really obnoxious and picky with my music, So there's a reason to know that term. Dynamics, the softness or loudness of the song's volume and intensity. So let's say someone writes an orchestral thing for you, and there's something just off about it. You can't figure it out, and you realize, you know what? It's the same volume the whole time. And orchestral stuff should really breathe and have quiet parts and loud parts, And so that's something you could tell them. You say, you know what? The dynamic range of this song is not great enough. I need more disparity between. I need more soft and more loud. I need a bigger dynamic range. I want my song to start like. You can't really build. Yeah. I want it to build. I don't want it to be like. Yeah. I want it to be like. Anyways. Let's keep going. So melody, the singable and memorable part of a song, usually played one note at a time. This is really important. You want to be able to distinguish the melody and the chords of a song, because that's like the number one thing you should be able to do if you're listening to a song and trying to figure out what you like or don't like about it. Because let's say there's a sound you don't like in a song, but you can't say what it is or what role it plays in the song. It's important to be able to do that. So knowing that the melody is important, it's the part that we always hum along to. When we hear Zelda, it's like, what is it? Like that's the part, that's the melody. You could have multiple melodies in a song. You could have like counter melodies. You have two melodies at the same time. You could have harmonies, which is like a melody and then another note at the same time. Like every metal song you've ever heard does that, where like there's one note that's going like, let's say, and everyone's going, and together you got this cool thing, being played at the same time. Chords are multiple notes together. Usually the backdrop of the song sets the mood of the song. I could have different chords over them. I could be like, and it totally is different. It's the same melody, different chords. Really changes the mood of Zelda, right? That's what a lot of people do when they do their, remix of songs, is that they might change the sounds of it, they might change the chords, but the melody is always the same in any video game remix you hear. Because if you change the melody, you're just ruining the song. You're like taking what people like, the most memorable part of the song, and getting rid of it, So it's usually a bad idea. Anyways, so then intro, verse, chorus, bridge, breakdown, outro, song sections, sometimes called ABC. This is really important because maybe you like a song, but you don't like a certain part of the song. You need to be able to identify what part of the song that is. You can't just say, oh, that part where the thing goes, like that doesn't really help. Like you need to say, what, the B section. You should be able to listen to a song and divide it into different sections. And so, being able to state that is very, very useful. If you're used to pop songs and just rock and whatever, then the idea of an intro, verse, and chorus and bridge should be pretty etched in your minds. Most video game music doesn't really do that though. It kind of has more just like A, B, C, because unless it has lyrics, it probably doesn't have like a chorus per se. You know what I mean? There might be a section that repeats over and over. That doesn't necessarily make it the chorus of the song. Anyways. Then a theme or motif. This is very important, used in films and video games all the time. It's a melodic idea that is used throughout a song or even an entire score. It's very effective in establishing a cohesive soundtrack. So if you ever heard like The Elder Scrolls, you're probably familiar with what's that? That little theme. It's in like every one of their games, and it's in multiple songs in every single game because it's like it creates this warm and fuzzy feeling every time you hear it, because it's just very, very memorable. Lots of films do this as well, where there's like a certain theme that's repeated in different songs in different ways. I might like in Zelda again as an example. This is not really a Zelda thing, but if I I could have like some other song I made that's like, a variation of that or something that's like super, dark and metal and be like, and I go into something that's different. But it starts out with that, so it's like, ooh, this is familiar, and now here's something completely different. So anyways, it's not every video game needs this though. Especially ones that are more ambient sounding, you're going to probably use this less because you're not going to rely on melody as much. But RPGs, super duper common. It's actually useful across not just an entire score, but an entire brand. Across an entire series of games like Final Fantasy. There are some repeats in their songs. Zelda is the same way. Elder Scrolls is the same way. A lot of epic style games do that. All right, genres of video games. So, we've got indie rock, alternative rock, new wave, punk, anime, blues, lullaby, avant-garde, choral, minimalism, medieval, orchestral, opera, bluegrass, country, trance, glitch, dubstep, house, lounge, swing, ambient, crunk, industrial, hip-hop, West Coast rap, East Coast rap, indie pop, bubblegum, gospel, not bubblegum gospel, but bubblegum and gospel. March music, J-rock, J-pop, there's also K-rock and K-pop, don't forget. Big band, Dixieland, fusion, Latin jazz, ragtime, reggae, ska, funk, Motown, doo-wop, soul, disco, folk, death metal, rockabilly, surf, musical, world, and klezmer. Don't forget klezmer. What I'm trying to say is this. There's more there than just chiptune music. So maybe use it. It's okay. It's not going to hurt you. There's nothing wrong with chiptune music. It's just that you don't always need it. In today's world, a lot of indie games use pixel graphics, which is totally cool. It's like a retro throwback. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the game needs to have a chiptune soundtrack. It's cool if it does, if it's just really a super throwback game. But there's a lot of interesting things that people do where it's a pixel game that has a film noir score or something, just like something really off the wall, and it can be really cool to do that. So even though chiptune music is cool and a lot of game devs seem to like to listen to it, doesn't necessarily mean that it fits your game. It's not necessarily what your game requires. There's so much more out there. So, think about it. It's my rant. Okay. So now we're moving on to the power of music. I don't really need this anymore. Okay. And let me get some water real awkwardly. Hang on. Okay, there we go. Music greatly influences player perception. This is about the power of music. Music interprets the emotional tone of what the player is watching / interacting with. It can give cues as to what the player should be feeling or doing, which can result in a more natural gameplay experience. Should the difficulty or intensity of the game be reflected in the score? If I'm playing a game like Super Meat Boy and the score is just like this chill, lounge music, I'm not going to feel quite as intense, as if the actual score of the game, which is a little more intense to kind of reflect the game. Should the music be more ambient and moody? Should it be memorable and catchy, which usually means there's more melody or more melodic content in the song. If you're playing a game that you could possibly be sitting in the same area for hours at a time, like specifically a crafting game, or a game like Crashlands, for example, you probably don't want something that's just incredibly catchy, because it's going to become incredibly annoying after about, the first half hour of playing the game. So you can still have melodies, but you have to just be careful about it. You can't have something as obnoxious as like Mario or something, It's going to get really annoying the 45th time you've heard, Anyways, should the song work with or against the scene? So, this is all really important stuff. Let's say I'm playing a game, a first-person shooter. Let's see if this works, actually, first of all. I would love it if the sound would work. And now, of course, awkwardly, it's not going to. No, it's not. I was told it would work. I don't know. It should be. Or we maybe have to change the output options. Hang on.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know Windows 8, so you rock that.
It's pretty similar. Same for.
Yeah, except that it sucks.
I mean, yeah. Aside from that,
Awesome. Wait, it's coming out.
it's coming out of a laptop.
Yeah. We should have, hang on. We can do this. We can do this. Wait a second. We need this. Where's the control panel on this silliness? I know. I'm sorry. I don't know Windows 8.
You should be
You just gotta go to sound settings and change the default output to HDMI, and we're good to go.
Playback devices.
There you go. Right click on that, dude. Make it. What?
It's not there.
Oh no, click on it and go. Oh, why can't you do that?
I don't
Oh, it
know.
says not plugged in. Oh, maybe that one. No.
Oh yeah, Christy.
Yeah,
Christy's
set-
the one.
Set the default.
Christy.
Do that. Yes.
Alright.
I hit play on it. Yes. So if I'm playing a first-person shooter and this is what I hear when I first start the game, I'm probably not going to go guns blazing, right? I'm probably going to be like, uh-oh, you know? I'm probably not going to start with the gun, first of all. But if I had a gun, like a pistol or a knife, I'm going to be very cautious. I'm going to be pretty spooked. But if I start a game, first-person shooter with this, from Serious Sam, I'm probably gonna go guns blazing, right? I'm not gonna be like, oh man, I don't know, you know? It's not gonna happen. So, music has a huge role in that. I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, but Sam pointed out to me that the music in the fight scenes is like very comical. It's like 80s rock music or whatever, you know? And it takes the intensity and the violence out of it, makes it like laughable almost, you know? You can work with or against the scene. You can change the emotional tone of it. You're basically telling the person that's watching it or playing the game, like, this is how you're gonna feel right now, you know? We can do weird things with that. For example, I don't know if this is gonna work. Try it. Ah, yes! Aha! All right, folks, here it comes. Get ready to cry. All right. So, Eris dies in Final Fantasy VII. I'm sorry, it's a little late. A little late for that. If you haven't played it, too bad. And, the music starts and it's playing her lullaby theme. And then you have to fight a boss. And the music stays like this. And you're fighting a boss and you're summoning like Bahamut and all this, Odin and all this crap, and things are flying everywhere, and it's still just like, for example. It's like, oh, it's battle time, and we're just gonna keep this. Because you're still really sad about it. It changes the whole tone of this moment, They could have been like, fight the boss, but they didn't do that. They're like, no, we're gonna make this sad. You're fighting like, ah! Like crying while you're hitting them, You're just really sad about it, It makes that moment more sad. If they went to the battle music, that moment would have been over, and nerds everywhere wouldn't be crying about it even in today. So, anyways, you can work against the scene like that if you want to, and you're basically just telling the player this is how you're gonna feel here. You're not going to feel like this is what the heck is going on with your thing? I'm like stuck to the, It's like, look, it's like stuck even if I click. It's like, it won't let go of the thing.
Oh no.
What the hell's going on? I really have no idea. I can't move that. Yeah, the mouse is like stuck. There we go.
Yeah, but you just needed to escape from it.
Well, I know, but but now I can't get it over. It's being stupid. Why are you so stupid? There we go. Wait, can I let go? It won't let me go!
Quick, tap the touchpad.
Whatever, we're just all tabbing. We're all tabbing that. Had enough of you. Alright. I know it seems like I'm computer illiterate, but I'm quite computer literate actually. I just look like an idiot right now. Alright, let's keep going. So, next thing. Music can be just as important as art in giving a game personality. It can be used with or against the visual art to create a strong identity. And to kind of follow up with that, mixing up a music genre that normally wouldn't be used with a certain art style can be very effective. Once again, going back to the pixel art, instead of using chiptune music, you can use something different, and it can really create a unique blend. You could do a first-person shooter that has like jazz music, or you could use like a violent game that has like really violent game that uses like Lounge Lizard jazz music, like a cutscene in Killer 7, which Phil pointed out to me. Characters can have their own music theme to bring them to life. and many RPGs use this tactic. This is something that's been going on for a long time, like Peter and the Wolf, if you're familiar with that old classical piece. Like the wolf has its own theme, and Peter has a theme. It actually tells the story through music. So very useful in RPGs or any game really where like characters are super important. You want to bond with the character, giving them their own theme. Sometimes really creates that, like the lullaby in Final Fantasy VII. You know, when she dies, they play her song, and it's very sad not because if you never heard that song before, it wouldn't be quite as sad, but because every time that she was in the game, you see that. You know, anytime there's some strong plot thing with her, they play that song, and you just register it in your head. You're like, okay, this is part of who she is, and so every time you see it, really it kind of brings back memories. You know, it's just like. We all have like summer jams, you know, these songs that like we remember from when we were younger, and we listen to them now and we go, oh, I remember when I did that thing. Remember we were at that place and we heard that song. We're like, yeah, that song's awesome, you know, like that. You know, music has that power. It evokes memories, and so using that in a game is very useful. Play it every time that character comes, and you're like, you associate that, you know, very very useful. Where's my thing? Hey, where are you, thing? Oh, you're still over here? What are you doing over there? Whatever. I don't even care anymore. So if I mix things up, like Bastion is a great example. This game is like, it's not like Diablo, but I'm just going to compare it to it because there's not a lot of good, I know, other people are cringing, but it's a top-down game, there's like action, whatever. You would not expect the soundtrack from it. It's got like a blues thing. It's got tracks that have like Indian instruments like tabla and sitar and stuff like that. It's got moments where it sounds like acoustic guitar, like Diablo-esque. Has certain tracks that sound kind of like the Tristan theme from Diablo or something. You know, that mashup really is kind of cool with the game. You wouldn't expect it. They could have totally done something very typical and they did not, and it worked very well for them. You know, this is actually a game you may have never heard of, but this is a pretty cool game that is not really out yet, but really cool cutscene game. It's a silly pixelated game. This is the intro cutscene.
Cursed he was by the desert scorn, the lovers now were torn. But in years' time, curse was thin, the cactus sprout middleland again. He went in search for his lost love, but beware, the witch doctors come.
Now you know you want to know more about that game, right? Because that was just like, the heck was that, you know? The actual music of the game is very chiptune-y, but that cutscene using that music is really kind of cool. Just kind of, it's weird, kind of funny, you know, kind of, this is a bad example of mashups. So this is the Chocobo, however you want to pronounce it, from Final Fantasy 13-2. There's like a mad Chocobo, or crazy one, and it plays this song. Terrible. Totally throws off the game, right? You cannot take a song serious and it's like, run this Chocobo! You know, like they have lyrics in this that are like that, you know? You can't take that seriously. That's ridiculous, you know? Going back to the themes. You should know this song, and if you don't, you're not old enough. But this is the Kefka theme from Final Fantasy. This is every time, he's like the main bad guy in that game. For Final Fantasy VI, for the people that are in the know. But anyways, this is like his song. Every time he shows up, it's like, whoa, I look like a clown, and I've got this crazy circusy evil music, you know? His final boss theme is even like, kind of like this. It has this melody in it, this motif, if you will. And then they have different music behind it, but it kind of comes back. Anyways, every time you see him, it's like, oh no, here he comes again, you know? So it works really well, you know? In RPGs, people have, almost every character in RPG has like a song, you know, and it works really, really well for them. Dee-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-doo. Oh, we're not there yet. Let's go back to this real quick. All right, so let's move on here. Music is the glue. Creates cohesion between locales that are completely different. So if I've got like a platformer where I'm going to, you know, a lava pit and I'm going to the forest and I'm just going all over there, all over the place trying to save somebody or something ridiculous, then having music that is cohesive really helps. Helps make the game seem like it's a solid thing instead of just totally random. Have you ever heard a music album that's so eclectic it doesn't sound like it was made by the same person? Some artists are like that, where one out, like all the songs are in completely different directions, you know? And sometimes the album works because there is some cohesive element, there's something about it that's always the same, but sometimes it's just like way too far. And it sounds like a mixtape. It doesn't sound like a cohesive album. So it's kind of useful. Music helps that. It helps tie together key moments in the story arc. Like I said, it kind of goes back to the themes, you know. If every time a certain moment, a certain, you know, important plot moment happens, there's always a theme that comes in. It's like the main theme of the game. That's kind of cool. Kind of like ties everything back to that main theme. Helps remind you, like, oh yeah, I'm in the story and stuff's happening now, you know. Like in between moments of just player interaction and combat. The use of musical motifs / themes aids this binding concept immensely. And is a must-win branding. We talked about that earlier. If I have a series of games or whatever, I want to try to make them all cohesive. If you hear a song from Zelda and you never played the game, you just hear a song that you've never heard before, and you know Zelda really well, you probably will know that's from a Zelda game, just because it is distinct, very distinct. Same thing with Oblivion and Morrowind, all those Elder Scrolls games. You know, a lot of their songs have that same motif over and over. Anywho, so like this is the Morrowind theme. There's like a couple seconds of little intro stuff, and then it starts. This melody is used in like every game, every single game. Here's the Oblivion theme. A couple seconds of nonsense. And guess what comes up? It's coming, I promise. It's the same melody you already heard, so it reminds you of the Morrowind. All right. Very, very, very common. How do I go back? This is from Morrowind as well. Where is it? Build up once again. Every Elder Scrolls song starts with like 20 seconds of fanfare. It's like, get ready for the song. It's coming. Here it comes. And then it goes off into something different. But it starts with that. The flute's playing that little thing. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Even in the battle sequence, it's like, remember this? Remember that? All right. So, music can be implemented in creative and abstract ways. If you've got a nice sound engine you've maybe created by scratch or used from something else, you can have multiple backing tracks playing at the same time, fading in and out depending on the circumstance. So I could actually split my song up into different parts that play all at the same time, and I can choose which ones I hear at what moment. So I could have a moment where it's just like bass and drums, and then suddenly, you know, you get to a certain part in the let's say it's a side-scrolling level, and you're moving through it. Halfway through, it gets more intense, and suddenly you hear, and then you get even further, and you're like, it's getting super intense, like, you know, like you could have it be like that, and it would only happen, it would only cue when you got to that spot. It wouldn't just be a preset thing that slowly builds over like 4 minutes. It would only happen when you got to that, so it's triggered by the game. You can have the game itself sync to the music, which you guys were just talking about, Tim was talking about as well. Technology issues with that. Doesn't always cross different platforms and stuff like that. It's not always going to work out. If it's a PC game, I imagine it maybe works better. I don't even know. I know nothing about these things, but maybe. Music can be used in place of conventional sound effects to give triggered cues a greater sense of identity. That's very useful. So, you know, if I'm like, if I'm opening a chest, if I can scroll down and I can't, I don't know what's going on. We'll come back to it. So in Banjo-Kazooie, they use multiple tracks at the same time in Gruntilda's lair. It's the same song over and over. Play. But depending on where you are in the area, it changes to have different little, different versions of the same track. And it just plays, it doesn't skip a beat. It's not like the song starts, it's not like the song ends and then begins again as a new thing. It literally just fades in and out. They're all playing at the same time. So it's kind of cool. All these different variations of the same thing, kind of cool. Fez does the syncing thing in a cool way, in the secret level. Oopsies. So someone was talking about this. You were talking about this with Platformer. This is basically a ripoff of that. I don't know who went first, but it's almost the exact same idea. Where the platforms come, the whoa, whoa, those are when the platforms come. And there's a little tap, tap. That's when the platform's leaving. You're gonna see it dot. It like blinks out. See that? See what I mean? So it's synced with the music. Kind of cool. Very tricky. Now, let's say I open a chest. It's a lot cooler instead of just a sound, when the chest opens. This is like, oh man, what's in it? Oh, there's light coming out. I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna pull it out. And then it's like, I got a boomerang! Yeah! It's so much cooler than just like so much better. So you gotta pick and choose your moments for that. You can't do it for everything. Metal Gear Solid. Instead of just going like, oh no, alert! It actually plays. It sounds like just sound effects, but actually a chord. It's a chord. It's a diminished chord. Just a really quick arpeggio. But even that, it gives it like an identity. You hear that, you could hear that, and you know exactly what it was. You could be in the middle of the day, you're just walking down the street, and it goes, whoop! And you're like, Metal Gear Solid. You know. Same thing with Zelda. I didn't have to show you that it was Zelda. You would have known what that was. Alright. Let's keep going. Oopsies. Oh, I don't know. What did I do? Okay. Sound effects gives players feedback. So this is more about sound effects now. Even basic sounds such as UI buttons give the game a feel and a mood. It gives a sense of satisfaction to the player for performing actions. It just feels good sometimes to click on a button. You play Gran Turismo and it's got this like smooth jazz in the background. You hit like, let's go, and it plays like a jazzy chord. It's like, what? You're like, yeah, it's good. I'm ready to race, It just feels good sometimes to click on things, Or if you equip stuff in like Diablo and you're like dragging your new sweet sword over to your sword slot, it's like, ka-ching! You're like, yes, it's good. Or when you're hitting someone and it's just got tons of bass in that sword sound, which makes no sense because that's not how it would sound, but whatever, just sounds satisfying. Just feel like a thud when you smack someone with a sword. Anyways, effects are a great way to alert the player to their surroundings, their current status, as well as inform them what to do next. Some games nowadays are really obnoxious with waypoints and stuff like that, but still they use sound effects and visuals to tell you exactly where to go next. Just hold your hand all the way through the game, but you could use it minimally and it'd be cool. You can alert them to their surroundings by using like background effects, so just like effects isn't necessarily just something that just goes bam, an effect. It could be something in the background throughout the whole thing, kind of plays along with the music essentially. So if I'm in a sewer and I hear a little bloop, bloop, little water trickling on the ground or scurrying of little rats here and there, like I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm in a sewer now, Sometimes the scene starts like especially in a first-person shooter or just first-person game where it's black. You're like waking up from something, and you hear the sound effects before you hear the sound before you see the visuals. It almost cues you as to what is coming, or it almost scares you in like a scary game. The lights turn out and it's like, ah! Or you hear a little, and you're like, oh man, and it's like behind you, and you're just like freaking out, Anyways, so we have a couple examples for that. So, UI is super important. If I start a game and it's like, starts like this, I'm like, oh man, this is on. This is gonna be spooky.
Resident Evil.
It just gets more and more intense as the series goes on.
Resident Evil.
Alright, let's get to the last one.
Resident Evil.
That's pretty intense, right? If I hit the start button and that's what it sounds like, I know I'm in for something, right? If I hit the start button and it's like, hey! Woo! You know, like, I know it's gonna be a good time, right? It's not gonna be like Resident Evil, right? Oh, well, yeah. So satisfaction feels good to get a coin, right? In Mario, if I was just grabbing all those coins and nothing happened, there was no response, I'd be like, yeah, screw coins. I'm not even going for that. Who cares? Extra lives, whatever. This game's easy anyways. But like, we get the coins for no reason. Even if we're really good at the game, we're just like, I want to get the coins because it goes bing when I get it. You know, why not? This is actually an example of a musical effect because it's actually 2 notes. Ba-bum. It's a perfect fourth in music, which is here comes the bride. Ba-dum. You know, that's the sound. Let's move on here. Sound effects can give characters personality. Simple voice acting, even just really minimal stuff, can go a long way in giving heroes, baddies, or even objects distinction. Sometimes even a simple grunt or groan can bring a game character to life. The human voice can create a variety of sounds, which can then be manipulated. So make sure if you do hire someone that they can do that. Because if you've got, effects libraries that you bought or whatever, and they cost a lot, like $500 or $600, you can only get so far with those. You can try to manipulate those individual, sounds that comes with it so much, but you're going to run out of room, basically. You're not going to be able to find what you want sometimes. So you need to be able to be creative and, record something yourself. So it's very useful if the person that is doing your audio can do that, has that capability. That's something you're probably looking for in someone that's doing your scoring / effects, or just the effects. Racing games like Mario Kart, these fun, silly ones, the characters have personality. If they didn't have any, it would not be cool, Like, Wario is fun to play as because of his annoying voice. It gives them distinction. Like, why would you play different characters? Oh yeah, Hadouken, don't forget. Why would you play different characters in a racing game if they all have the same stats and they all, even if they had different stats, would you really choose different ones if they didn't have, like, personality? Have you ever played Mario Kart and someone picks someone bad because they just like who they are? Like, they're obviously an inferior character for the game, or for the level you're playing. And they just pick him because they're like, yeah, I like Wario. Whatever. It takes him a while for him to speed up, and this course has nothing but turns, so he just never gets a chance to get going. But, I like Wario. I want to hit someone and be like, wah, ha, ha. It's awesome, What if you play as Waluigi? He's stupid. I don't know. I just don't get it, Because he has a voice. He has a personality, And it's not like Wario says a ton of things about it. You just heard everything he says in Mario Kart 64. That's all the voice acting in the game, for him. It doesn't take that much to give him personality, In fighting games, especially a game where 2 characters are very, very similar, aside from a couple key differences, especially early on in the series, having different voices kind of helps. Although I don't even know, did they even have different voices for the Hadouken? I almost feel like they might have been exactly the same in the other voices. But anyways, you get the point. It's a bad example, but the point is made. But also, it makes that move so much cooler. So much cooler. It's like, Hadouken, and he's like flipping around in the air, If he was just like, or nothing happened, it was just, that would not be nearly as cool as if he was like telling you his move as he does it in a totally ridiculous anime fashion, It's cool when that happens, when instead of doing a move, which is a sound effect, there's a sound instead, It can be kind of cool in games. Grunts and groans. Everything we know about Link is this. He doesn't talk. He never talks. His entire personality is from this. This is what we know. This is him. This is what he does. It'd be fun to do the voice acting for him. Most of Link and Zelda is just grunts and groans, But that's his personality. That's it, you know? But it helps, like it works. We identify him through that. He has a sense of identity. He has a character. You know, and everyone in Zelda is like that. You know, Ganondorf's like, nah, nah, or I don't know, what does he do? He just like grunts or something? He's like, raw, raw. I think it's a hearty laugh, maybe. I don't know. Everyone has like a thing, you know, they do. There's very, very little actual voice acting in a lot of these Zelda games. But it works. It works for the series. It proves the point that you can have personality by using music to give them like a sense of identity because they've got their own theme. It shows you that even just a little minimal voice acting, just some grunts and groans, gives them that personality. You have a question?
I was just going to say, I
Go
don't
for
know if this is true or not, but possibly just the grunts and groans is just to make it easier to go from Japanese to the American audience.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just do that to translate.
Yep. Well, they needed the grunts and groans for all of his movement.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But I don't think they could have handled on 64 like all that. There's a lot of text, and to have voice acting for that would have been, it's the limitations of the system, but also, hey, it works out really great. You know, because even now, obviously, they could do it, but like, nah. Let's just keep it the way we're going. You know, because it works. We keep buying Zelda games. We don't really care.
It's also because Link is not, his name is actually not Link.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually whatever you call him in the game, because
That is
he
true.
doesn't have an identity. You put the identity on him. So they can't do that if they have like pre-recorded voice.
This is true. This is true. Smarty pants. All right. Well, I don't. Well, we all know him as Link. But yes, I agree. I agree with the point. I agree with the point. Dibba-dibba-doo. Okay, next thing. Sound effects can give players new strategies and mechanics to work with through the simple act of listening. Any combat-based game can benefit from audio tells, which give away the next move of the enemy. Boss encounters rely on this heavily. Guy's like super bad, yet he's the worst boss in the world because he's like, oh, I'm gonna do my move. I'll give you 5 seconds to get out of the way. Kaboom! Straight line attack, and you go over there because you hurt me. Right? And everybody does that, right? Lots of lots of old school games do it, especially, but because if you feel like it's unfair if they don't give you a tell, right? They at least give you a visual tell usually, but sometimes they don't. Like maybe they go off screen, and you hear something and go, uh-oh, look out! You know, he's gonna drop rocks in here. And it tells me something's going to fall on my head if I don't move. Even just regular enemies can benefit from this greatly. You know, it gives a sense of fairness to the game. You know, it makes you feel like, well, I figured out this game and now I'm good at it. You know, instead of just like my reflexes are so fast that I'm good at this game. You know, not everyone likes Twitch-based games. So like, if a game relies on combat and you don't want it to be Twitch-based, having tells is obviously a very handy thing, and audio helps with that. In multiplayer games, it's really useful, especially first-person shooters. You need a way to locate others by listening. I can't tell you how many Counter-Strike games I played in college where the end ends up with one person on each team, and they're walking around like this. Because when you walk in Counter-Strike, it doesn't make sound. When you run, you hear the footsteps. So everyone's walking around with guns like this, because you can't hear. And suddenly, like, you know, you both come around the corner at the same time, and you're like, oh, shit, I didn't see that coming. You know, and the guns they shoot help a lot. You know, Counter-Strike is such a competitive, well, kind of a competitive game to certain people. You know, if you hear this sound, and you play this game, you know, it's an AWP, and you're like, you know, to not go out in the open field if you hear that sniper rifle, because that's the strongest sniper rifle. It's going to one-hit shot you if you get shot in, like, the hand. It's super OP. Anyways, when you hear that sound, it cues you. You know, like, oh, I better not go out there, you know? So very, very useful in, like, multiplayer games and stuff like that. All right, so now we're going to move on to some other stuff. So some quick programming considerations. Most of the time we use loops, which work great for game scenes of variable length, right? If you don't know how long you're going to be in a scene, you can't have a song that just ends. Suddenly the player's like, what happened? This is really weird, you know? It must be seamless. The player doesn't want to notice when the music loops. Otherwise, then it becomes extremely annoying if you always know when it begins and ends. You can have different loops that are sequenced in a set or random order. If you can program it, that's a pretty cool thing to do. It was something we thought about doing in Crashlands, and then we're like, screw it. But in ambient music, it can be very useful. You know, let's say I've got a 5-minute loop, and it's split into 5, let's say each section is like a minute long or something. I've got 5 1-minute sections. I could program it so that after each section, it goes to a random one, but it can't be like the previous 2. So the last 2 minutes that you heard will never be repeated in the next minute. So it just keeps evolving and changing, and it's not so noticeable that it's one exact 5-minute loop. Can be kind of a useful thing. The only hard part is then the beginning and ending of every loop has to be like seamless, which is very difficult in music because sometimes you want things to tie over or sounds to carry over into the next part. If you have 1-minute chops like that, it's a lot harder to do. It's doable, but it kind of changes the way that you write. Anyways, you can have different loops. If the loops are entirely different songs, consider using a fade so that the change isn't so jarring. So if I move from one area to another, or if I'm in the same area and I want to have multiple background songs that go from one to the other, I want to fade in and out. I don't want to be like song ends, boom, and then song begins, because then it's very, very annoying to the player. It's meant to be more background music. Scripted sequences are the other common type of music that you're going to have in games. It's usually used for time-limited gameplay, like cutscenes, trailers, or time-limited gameplay. It has a start and end time that won't loop. You can try to fit an existing visual's length, or you can try to make, if you work with the person, you could write it and they could fit it to what you wrote. This is commonly done for trailers a lot, where they will purposefully, someone will write a song and they'll purposefully fit it to the song. So when like a big change happens, suddenly you hear like this, the screen shifts to a different scene, essentially, something like that, That can be kind of a cool effect. Good scripted sequences do that. They sync the music and visuals up at key moments to engage the player or the viewer. Let's see. When we were starting this, I did a little fun one with this game, Evil Land. How do I get full screen on this thing? Oh, whatever. So this game is like an RPG that goes from like lo-fi to hi-fi. It goes from the beginning of gaming to more recent stuff. So I had the music change over time. And certain parts you'll see will kind of sync up. So as you get out of this, some orchestral things come in the background, because we're now getting to some more high-tech SNES Final Fantasy stuff. And then when it goes to 3D, there's some more fanfare that comes in and kind of syncs up. So little things like that help make the game, or the trailer, more interesting or whatever. Because I thought the trailer for this was awful, because it just played like metal rock battle music, which I thought was really stupid, because it didn't play on what the game was about, I thought it was a lot cooler to do something like that, where it actually, fits. Yes?
When I was listening, I didn't see clear breaks in music transitions. Do you track it where there's multiple separate tracks when the transition's supposed to happen? You keep kind of like the bass, like
What I did is I built it upon. So I started with the retro stuff, and actually I kept a lot of the retro stuff as I went. So because I wanted it to be the idea that it's all together in the game. So instead of like actually changing directly from retro to orchestral, I had it blend together by the end, essentially.
And the game itself is going to play where you'll have that on a separate track. So as soon as they enter a new room and you've seen maybe the background track will keep playing, but then what the scene-specific track will queue up? Is that how you design your soundtracks?
Well, in that game, I think the music changes just as you're going through it. Like you basically unlock little chests and things like that just suddenly change the design of the game, basically, to go from like a Zelda style to a Final Fantasy SNES style to a more like, I don't even know what it is at the end, really. What's that? Sure. But anyway, yeah. So I thought it fit. I thought it was a better version of what it was, because I feel like they weren't selling the game by just playing generic battle music in the background. I thought it worked better if they're trying to sell this idea to have music that goes with it. So it just stays retro until you see it really shift to a 3D look coming up right here. Some timpani, wind instruments and strings and stuff. Pretty much stays with that instrumentation until we get to this ending little thing here. right here. We added cymbals, snare, percussion, some higher trumpet stuff. I'm gonna have the chord kind of hit as the thing comes up, you know. Yay! Evo Land, you know. But anyways, this was me doing it after the fact. So I had to find a tempo that worked with it. So I actually had to try to, you know, fit it to it, which is actually very hard to do. I didn't I didn't really screw around with the timing of the visuals. I just tried to keep it the same, and I picked a tempo that seemed to match up right with the switches, you know. Anyways, so let's get back to our stuff here. So some common audio formats. OGG, Vorbis or whatever, OGG. That's not a rap song. That's not funny. Anyways, typically the best choice for size/quality. Loops audio seamlessly, very important. It's more CPU intensive when streaming because it has to decode the audio as it goes. MP3 just don't use. It's about the same size, but it does not loop audio seamlessly because it has this info at the beginning of it that adds like an extra 0.5 seconds of time. And there are certain files, there's certain MP3 types and there's certain tricks to make it so it does loop, but most commonly it doesn't, put it that way. We actually came across an issue with Crashlands because the old version of Pro Tools I had, which is the audio stuff, the audio software I used, you could make MP3s, or you wouldn't make MP3s. And so I used a converter program that actually was able to make MP3s seamless. And then I was sending it to him, and it wasn't seamless when it was looping in the game. And I was like, it's your guys' fault. What's going on, you know? And then I realized that I got a new version of Pro Tools, and I was able to export MP3s in it. So I said, I'll just do the MP3s out of Pro Tools, so I don't have to convert it later with a third-party program. Turns out Pro Tools makes the normal file type of MP3, and so it would not loop seamless. So it was my bad. And I was like, sorry guys. Anyways, so don't use MP3s, even though they're very popular for just like listening to music and stuff. WAV, or AIFF, if you're a silly Mac person. Highest quality available for audio. Loops seamlessly. Less CPU intensive, because it requires no decoding, but it takes up 10 times the space. Not practical at all for typical gaming. Even if you convert to OGG, it's really important. If you convert from MP3 to OGG, don't think suddenly it's going to be a seamless loop. It's not. It's still taking the old thing and just converting it. It's like if I had a really low-res picture and I expanded it to like, you know, some huge pixel width and height. It still looks like junk, right? It's not like suddenly it's high-res. It's just a slightly high. It's like a technically high-res version of a low-quality thing, right? So you need to go if they're giving you WAV files, you need to convert directly to OGG. If they give you MP3s, it's not going to work. You need to ask for WAV files. MP3s can work if you're doing sound effects because that slight delay doesn't matter too much with sound effects unless it's extremely time sensitive. Most people cannot perceive 0.5 seconds, but in a loop you will because it'll just sound like a really quick stutter. You can use MP3s for sound effects if you want, but you might as well just use OGG if your program lets you use it. It's just a better idea. Creating a good audio asset list. So now we're talking about if you've got someone contracted, you need to make a list for them of what you need for the game, your sound assets. Things to think about. Decide what music should be a loop, what needs to be a scripted length, which we just talked about. Consider whether certain events should be short musical cues or effects. We talked about that too, like opening a chest in Zelda, right? It was like, oh wow, this is awesome. You can choose whether you want to do that or not. Plan to add extra effects as the game develops because the initial list will rarely cover everything. Keep your limitations in mind for space. And keep voice limitations in mind for effects. Not, you can only have so many in Game Maker, you can have 8, or you can choose.
You can
maybe.
set it to whatever. But.
Yeah, but most people choose to limit it because you don't want to suddenly overload the CPU with like 1,000 things at once, or you don't always have the bandwidth to have 40,000 effects come at the same time. If you're playing a game like Diablo where you have like hordes of enemies coming at you, You're not going to hear every single one of their like war cries or death cries because that would just crap out the computer. So you need to keep that in mind when you're doing stuff. An example of that is if an enemy fires multiple missiles that have an exact timed length, instead of having one sound effect for every missile that like crash lands somewhere or something, have one sound effect that goes bing, 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 all 3 of them in a row. Save space, only one sound effect plays instead of 3 coming off at the same time. And come up with references. So let's talk about references real quick. References anything that aids the musician/sound designer in making the appropriate sound asset. It could include similar music or sound effects, as what you're going for, concept or in-game art, storyline and character concepts, or even just short descriptions of what you're going for. Very, very, very helpful. Super helpful, in fact, in all caps, as you can see. You can use them for every sound asset in the list if you want. You don't have to, but it's very useful. Communicates what you want in a field that you know very little about, or maybe you know little about, but you don't know as much as the person that you're hiring. Don't be afraid to include multiple references for one sound asset, provided that they don't conflict. Don't ask, say, like, I want this to be like an epic battle piece, and then be like, and I also like this one that's like this ambient techno thing. Like, maybe you could do some merger of them, like, no. Give a clear direction. Make sure to explain what you like about the reference. That's really important. Don't just give them something and say, I like this song. Like, do something like this song. Say something about the song. Why do you like the song? And why do you think it works for you? Yes, exactly. Why is it good? Because I might get a reference from someone and I make something that I think fits it to a T. And it turns out they didn't really want it to a T. They wanted an element of it, a specific element. They didn't want the whole thing, So if you give people multiple references, explain what you'd like in each one. So let's say I've got one song and I have multiple references for it. I say, you know what, I like the melody, I like the sound of the melody in this song. I like that hummable, remember the melody is like the part like the Zelda da-da-ba-da-da, that, it's the part that we all remember. I like the sound of that instrument, whatever. I don't know what it is, don't even know. But I know I like it. I want my song to have that sound for the melody. This other song, I like the pulse, I like the rhythm, I like the, I want that. I want that in the song, And this other song, I like all the background stuff in it. It's got this cool techno synth thing going on, and I want my song to have that mood, that setting that the melody sits on top of. So very important that last point there. When you are actually writing the asset list, use some sort of online cloud document that can be altered by both parties. That ties in the next thing, keeping things organized. Very helpful. It's very useful if I can cross off something on a list that both parties can see. So I know when I finish something, they know when I finish something. They can even have a section on there that says, here's a list of things that you've already done, but we want you to change. So you know what's on your to-do list, not only of what's remaining in the list, but what you've already done, but needs to be altered a little bit to fit what they want. Include links to references. Very handy if you're, actually, sending them to YouTube or something like that, So I can just quickly pull that up in that document. So I have to go all over the place and go back, cycle through emails to find that link that you had. It's better if it's already in the document with the asset list. Leave room for a short feedback section where developers can list changes, fixes, and new, which I just talked about. It's a very, very handy little thing. Make sure both parties are clear on the order things need to be done. Make sure the composer, sound designer understands the references clearly. Common mistakes, bad organization, the inability for the audio person to alter the document, resulting in confusion of what's done and what isn't, lack of references, and poor communication on the priority of each audio asset listed. You might give an asset list and this person works on this one thing for like 2 weeks, and it's like the last song of the game. And they send it to you like, here you go. I worked so hard on this. You're like, you know what? We're not even at this stage of the game. We don't even really know what we wanted yet. We kind of just gave you some ideas because we just wanted you to have just an overall scope of what we're going for. But you know what? We don't even need this now. This is a waste of your time. You could have been doing stuff that we could have implemented in the game, and instead you made stuff that is just useless. And we'll probably just ask you, maybe we'll even cut it later. You know what? We're not even going to have boss fight at the end. Just You get a lollipop at the end of the game's over. That's it, you know? All right, last part, working with musicians / sound folk. Step 1. Oh, it's a sound baby cycle. This is when you're going to make a sound baby. All right? So step 1 is planning for the baby. You're going to consult on what you're looking for in a particular piece of music or effects beyond what's on the asset list. Maybe just talk a little bit more about it. You know, you might have given them references and stuff, but it might be handy to give them a little more background on what it is you're looking for. Make a trial baby, step 2. Start small. Always start small. Don't ask the composer to make an entire song. They send it to you and you're like, you know what, scrap it, don't like it, start over. That's a huge waste of their time. They're pissed off. You're unhappy because they took so long to make it, you know. Ask for something short that they can give you a quick turnaround on. So they quickly send you something. It's an idea of what it is, and you can say, you know what, I like this. Let's go with it. Finish it. You know, or you know what, don't like it. Start over. That way, not much time is wasted. For effects, you could do a similar thing to this. You could do like a smaller batch or a section of effects or something before moving on. I don't know. More useful for music for sure. Are you ready to be a parent? Send feedback before the musician / sound engineer completes the work, so no time is wasted. If it's not the right direction, start the whole thing over. You throw that baby out with the bathwater, and you start over. If only this worked in real life. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, that's horrible, I'm a parent. Step 4. Step 4, deliver the baby. After some further back and forth, you know, maybe you go, you know, you're like, I like this direction, finish what you're doing. They finish it, and you're like, you know what, I like everything. There's a couple little tweaks. You know, you go back and forth a little bit. Rarely is something done the first time. That's okay, as long as it's not like endless back and forth. You know, after some back and forth, sound baby is delivered. Both parties / parents are happy. Yay. Some quick things about communicating well. Both parties should use basic terminology. You know, a lot of the terms that I listed at the beginning in that music primer section, you know, try to use some of those words if you can. It may seem crazy, but that's basic terminology. You can get all crazy and start using Italian words for music, you know. Crescendo and retardando and you know, fortissimo. Anyways, you know, only use something specific to the craft if it's required. You cannot think of anything else, you know, if there's no other alternative. When in doubt, use references, of course. You know, if they make something, you gave them references, it's not what you're looking for, you say, you know what, let me give you a different reference. Maybe this other one will help you. Maybe this is more in the direction of what you're looking for. Maybe this, you know, maybe this has the element that I liked in the other reference, but this might give you a better impression. Be courteous, humble, and respect each other's expertise. Super, super duper important. I don't know a lot about making games. I don't know, I'm not very good at programming at all. You know, I took a class in high school and I made a what do you call it? What's that game where you need 21 car or 20? Blackjack. I don't know why I just blanked. Brain fart. Blackjack. I made a blackjack game. You know, that's about my extent. You know, I messed around with like RPG Maker once, thinking I was gonna make some epic thing, and I was like, this is way too much work, and it's probably not gonna be very good. So, you know, just always be humble about it, you know. Understand that the musician really knows what they're doing, you know, and so if it's not what you want, don't just be like, you don't know what you're doing, this is what I want, you know. Be like, well, let's try to find some common ground here. And learn from each other, super important, you know. I've learned things about Game Maker from working with Sam and Seth, you know. I've learned some stuff about Axflixel from working with Tim. You know, I've just learned things about game design in general from working with various people. I've just learned a whole lot. I've learned that Tumblr is a bad place to try to find work with developers because most of them are not very serious, and a lot of them scrap the project after a week or two. So, you know, I've learned a lot. Very, very useful. All right, Q&A. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap this up?